I own 2 copies of the first Dune. I'm particularly proud of this Target exclusive. It's got a bunch of like little cards in it. I love Dune.
Hello, Adam Ryan Donato.
Hello, welcome back to another hard review, and I am here, of course, to talk about the most anticipated sequel in modern memory. We have, of course, Dune Part 2. Now, we're just blessed to even have a Dune Part 2. I am old enough to remember, it was actually one of my first screenings that I actually got to go to was the first Dune movie, and when I saw that there was Part 1, I was so happy. And of course, the first one's great. It made my top 10 list for the year 2021. Despite the poor box office of the first movie, we are getting a sequel because the first movie was released day and date with HBO Max, meaning that people could watch it at home for free if they had HBO Max. This time around, no dice, baby. It is just theaters, and we have a huge, awesome cast just like the first movie. Everything is bigger and better about this sequel. Christopher Nolan was truly correct in his interview with Denis Villeneuve when he said that this is the Empire Strikes Back of the Dune franchise. Which is such a funny thing to say because obviously most movies today are based off of Star Wars, but Star Wars was in part based off of Dune. And there are a lot of things here that kind of remind me of The Empire Strikes Back. One of my favorite things about this sequel is the character of Paul Atreides, getting to see him be more proactive in this sequel and have a little bit more agency of his own and that's not the fault of the first movie because in the first one a lot of things are happening to him. He still has his parents, he's under their rule. When the invasion happens, it's just, okay, we gotta escape and get out of here. He's very reactive. He doesn't really have many of his own like plans or things that he is trying to do. Everything, there's like prophecy surrounding him and everyone seems to be pushing him in different directions. So here we're seeing him come up with plans of his own, acting upon them, and we're really exploring his relationships with other people, whereas I feel like in the first movie, there was like one scene or one or two scenes with every single character where they were like a mentor to Timothée Chalamet, and here it's less like that. It seems like he's an equal to his peers in this movie. One thing that we didn't get a lot of in the first movie that I'm really happy we got a lot of here is Zendaya is in a lot of this movie. They really do a good job building up their relationship. One of my favorite scenes in particular is in the trailer. It's when Paul and her are sitting on the sand dune and he's trying to explain to her, you see all that vastness of sand out here? And my planet, that's water, and you can dive headfirst and not touch the bottom. That's how much water that there is. It's not even fathomable for her, you know what I mean? They live in a society where there's this awesome like little devices in this. Stab a person that is dying, and they like extracts all the like water and fluid from their body. And I don't know if it was in the first movie, but I definitely noticed it here because every time it happened, I was like, ugh. Zendaya gets a lot to do in this movie, especially towards the end. I was like really surprised with how much moral gray area and agency that her character had. Obviously, we get a much better performance from Chalamet here than in the first one. Not that he was bad in the first one, it's just he didn't really have much to do here. He's making speeches. It's really intriguing watching his rise to power as he conquers the Fremen ways, tries to use pieces that he has available to him to try to get revenge upon the Emperor, avenge his father. Another highlight of this movie for me was Austin Butler. Now, that's no surprise. I am the biggest fan of the Elvis movie from Baz Luhrmann. Here, he is also doing a funny voice, and if you did not like the Elvis voice that he does, he fully commits to this voice as well. But I really like it. It really falls in line with what Stellan Skarsgård, I feel like, was doing. He's a terrifying villain. He's kind of like a psycho in a lot of ways. Like, ugh, like I didn't want to be near him. Like, I love the look. I mean, he's just a beautiful human being in general. He's like this like terrifying like psycho, and that's what I loved about his character so much. It's funny because I had watched the first Dune movie at some point, I feel like in early 2021. So in theory, I should know everything that was going to happen in this movie. And I know vaguely how it was going to end, but I didn't necessarily know all the detail. I didn't remember all the details of what happened at the end of the Dune David Lynch movie. Obviously, the sequel is much better than that movie. Now, do I think that Dune Part 2 is better than Dune Part 1? Dune Part 1's a lot of setup, whereas Dune 2 were able to more so develop the central conflict conflict of this overarching story. After my first viewing of Dune Part 2, I will opt for Dune Part 1 because I do think it's so masterful how they're able to do the world building. I'm able to like fully understand what's going on in this world and all the little creatures. There's a lot more little creatures in the first movie that I enjoyed seeing than we got in this movie. So while I do appreciate our central characters having more agency in this sequel, and again, it's probably I need time to digest this movie. I remember my first review, I said something like, is this movie going to be easily digestible for casual audiences? And again, it will not. In the first movie, you have all the information you need. You don't need to go in with any prior knowledge. So this one, not only do you have to know everything about the first movie, which is also a very long movie, and then this is 2 hours and 46 minutes, and it's very dark, it's very dour. There's not a lot of comedic relief in this movie. All of the comedic relief is actually brought by Javier Bardem's character, and he's not like telling jokes. He's just like actually like funny and charismatic as a human being. It is really interesting seeing him for his perspective of Paul Atreides at the end of the first movie compared to what it develops into in this movie. But it's a lot of heavy-handed religious and political metaphors. Like, I mean, they're even saying it all throughout the marketing. This is a big like forewarning ideological dangers that plague our society today. It's a very heavy and deep movie full of rich themes, and it's one that I feel like will be even better and better on rewatch. I actually got to rewatch Dune Part 1 in the Regal Point Orlando IMAX. It was beautiful, and I got a lot more out of it the second time around. Actually, that was my third time. I can't see myself rushing back out to the theater to experience 3 hours of Dune Part 2, but I'm so thankful and appreciative that we have this movie. It's no surprise to me or to anyone watching this video that Dune Part 2 is the best movie, far and away the most superior film of 2024, and it will continue to be that way for the foreseeable future. There's nothing really out there on the horizon that seems to have any type of chance standing against Dune Part 2. It's complete masterful filmmaking. Denis Villeneuve outdoes himself once again. The cast is absolutely stellar. I know I didn't read the book, but it's such a great adaptation of the story in comparison to the Lynch version. It's funny because after the first Dune movie, we were like, oh, well, we can't really fully judge this movie because it really does feel like half of a movie. And then I can't wait for the second half of the movie where I can fully judge it. The first thing I said at the end of this movie was fuck, because I knew that I would have to wait another 2 to 3, 4 years maybe to watch the next part of this story because I was so entrenched in what was going on, and I could tell it was building up to this finale, and I'm like, no, there's so much more that I want out of this. But that's a good thing. It's not like I want more that I didn't get. It's just that I'm so invested in what is going on, and I appreciate the story that's happening so much that I don't want it to be over, which is such a compliment to a movie that is sniffing 3 hours long. After watching this sequel, Dune Part 1 being its own movie, it still doesn't stand on its own in the same way that something like Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope I feel like does, but I do feel like this sequel does a better job of standing on its own than most sequels like this. Like, for example, Across the Spider-Verse is one that draws a lot of controversy with its being a Part 1. Well, it's not a Part 1. It was supposed to be a Part 1, but it definitely acts like a half of a movie with this big cliffhanger at the end. At the end of this one, we get a amount of finality. Obviously, there's threads that we still need to follow, but I do feel like a lot of these central conflicts have been carried out. I do feel like there's this sense of finality with this one, despite a whole epic third act of this story that is about to unfold. And I really do think that this third act has the potential to be the best act of the trilogy, which is crazy because most trilogies, the third movie is not the best one. Exclude stuff like Lord of the Rings. But it is such a huge cinema win to have Dune Part 2 grace the big screen. Go watch this in the largest format possible. Please check this movie out. Rewatch the first Dune. Give this movie a chance. I know it's not Marvel popcorny. Oh, he's right behind me, isn't he? And bright, colorful, fun special effects. But it is beautiful science fiction. It is expertly written and adapted. The filmmaking is gorgeous. The effects, the music, the performances, everything. This is damn near perfect science fiction film in every way, shape, and form. 5 out of 5. Go check it out in a theater. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. Like, comment, subscribe, and why don't you guys tell me what your favorite Denis Villeneuve movie is? And I, on the spot right now, without even thinking about it, I actually would probably go with Prisoners over Arrival and Blade Runner 2049, just because Prisoners, that's like my comfort depression movie. Oh, it's raining and I don't feel good.